This is Steve Heitzer, and you're listening to Everyone Needs a Spotter. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Everyone Needs a Spotter, the multifamily fitness podcast brought to you by the expert team here at RMS Fitness. I will admit, it has been a minute. We have not been on the mic recently. We have been wrapped up in the busy conclusions of budget season here as summer winds down for us and our colleagues, trying to sneak in a couple last-minute vacations and all the other things that the end of summer bring. But we are happy to be back here. I know I speak on behalf of the whole team, and they're all here with me today when I say we're happy to be back on the mic. We're going to go ahead and introduce everybody, as is our custom, starting on my right. Little wipey, Emily V, what it be?
What's going on, Steve? It's nice to have the crew back together, which I feel like I say the beginning of every podcast. But to your point, it's been a few weeks. We've all been busy. Steven's decided to take off every single Friday of my life. And so now he's back. And now
Fridays are lame now.
Yes, it is. So now the four of us are finally here all together, and it's nice.
Indeed it is. So you know what? You mentioned him. We'll bring him back. To my left, Steven, I don't see him. Donadio, what's going on, brother?
What's up, Steve? It's nice to have the planets aligned to this Friday so that I can be here and enjoy this podcast.
You know what? We're glad, man. We know those Fridays have been laborious. And, I'm sure you've actually been working hard. I'm not going to go ahead and assume that you haven't been doing anything. I know you've been busy. But we are grateful to have you back. I almost forgot what you looked like. And it's nice to have you here in the building, here with us today. So we would be remiss if we didn't introduce the man, the myth, the legend himself, fearless leader, Robert Decker. How goes it, my bro?
Steve, I'm sitting across from you, and it is a pleasure to be sitting this far away from so much of you.
It's a lot.
Well, don't sound too excited. You're going to disappoint our one of our favorite listeners, Glenn Taylor, if he detects too much excitement coming from you. So keep it low key over there, buddy.
Yeah.
Don't get all worked up.
Yeah, the stress is high.
Well, no, you know what? The team all mentioned it. It is great to be back together. It has been a little bit of a while. And you know what? There's been a lot of things going on. We made some allusions to the things that we have been dealing with, but obviously it has been summer. There have been some vacations. There have been, road trips, people out on the road driving up to New Jersey and down to Virginia and everywhere else in between. And, just trying to make sure that we are where we need to be for our customers. This is a time of year when many people are working on their future plans, kind of getting their ducks in a row, so to speak, for what's going to be coming down the pipe in 2025. And we're just grateful to be a part of all that. So it's a good way to be busy. That is for sure. Emily, how has your week been? Anything exciting to report from the last couple of days of activities? Any jobs that you've been on that have been particularly fun or enjoyable?
This week I feel like was mostly a lot of just office time and catching up. A lot of necessary evils as far as employee reviews. And we've had a lot of new teammates come aboard, so we were just kind of like catching up with them, see how things are going. It's nice that one of our newest technicians, his name is Gray, so shout out to Gray.
Gary!
I was really excited just to hear that he felt like he was settling in and he has been enjoying, everything here so far. So, just things like that make you feel really good and excited and so no, I haven't been on any big jobs. Monday's going to be a big job, so stay tuned for pictures because we do have before pictures. It's a new renovated space, so we will be able to see. Bob, I'm going to take away your laptop.
Yeah, Robert and Steven, they can't put the devices down. They can't put these devices down, guys.
Side note,
this was recorded.
Side note. We have already talked about the click, 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 and the typing, and then this is going on in front of me, and I'm so distracted.
Well, full disclosure. I mean, this is like nerd. We're nerding out here on a design for a customer for dumbbells, so it is work related as well.
And it has flames on it. I mean, come on, it's got flames.
But you are very
That is
dangerously
pretty cool.
close to having your nickname changed from Fearless Leader to Relentless Clicker.
That's right. So I'm done with my thoughts. So there you go. Back to you, Steve.
No, but you know what? To your point, Emily, it has been great to welcome Gray on board here with us. Super cool to have young blood joining the fitness industry. It tends to be an old dogs hangout over here, so it's cool to have a young guy join the team who's got a good back and presumably a strong cardiovascular system that will last for many years to come.
And along with Gray, I do want to also do a shout out to Adriana because she's also been here for 30 days now, and she is our assistant marketing director, and she has been great. I'm so excited to have her. So new things that property managers might see come from us as far as like content or email material. It's most likely been designed by her, and we're just so grateful to have her on board.
And I hope she knows that once you make it through the first 30 days, you're in for the next 30 years at RMS. So.
And that's how that works.
No, across the table, Robert, I see your hand. Thoughts, comments, feelings to share?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you mentioned new blood in the industry. Before we started the podcast, I had to talk to someone who's been in the industry for a while. And, hearing the same drudgery that we hear in the industry. We all have our challenges regardless of what our expertise is or whatever field we work in. But when you have someone like a Gray come on board, Stephen and myself, we get to teach someone who doesn't have the old habits, it's fresh, and to be able to pass down expertise like that, it is very refreshing, especially in a world where, and I'm probably being more one-sided on this discussion. I feel like the guy from Dirty Jobs, what's his name?
Mike Rowe?
Yeah.
Copyright infringement.
Yeah. Where he just talks about a lot of, back when I was in school, everyone was supposed to get a job behind a desk, and that if you didn't get it behind the desk, you were a failure. Using your hands. Like for me, I was a mechanic at one point, and then I took that mechanics to low-volt electronics, and now Gray starting early like this, instead of putting something like that off by starting early, that hopefully he'll get ahead of a lot of the things that Stephen and I had to do through multiple careers to get here, that he might, be able to be where we are in a shorter period of time and really develop well in this industry.
Yeah, and those skills, though, are super practical to have, too. Those, basic mechanical skills, things that you can just do with your hands. I know even from my time as a technician, when I started with RMS Fitness, I value that time a lot and the things that I learned.
When was that?
It was about the first 15 minutes or so of
That's
2019.
what it was.
No, I think it was about 9 months or so that I was turning wrenches, and I think it was it was cool though for me to get to learn some skills I didn't already have. And now I always joke about how I'll try to fix anything once in my house, and a lot of times I make it worse, but I will still try. And I wouldn't have felt even competent enough to even give that a go. So for these young guys coming on board, I think it's really cool. Even my own son is he's starting high school this year, and he's in a magnet program for building and construction. So it's cool to see the young generation see value in physical skill sets and things like that go beyond typing on a computer, which is all I can do these days. Stephen, to my left, you've been busy. Anything exciting to report?
Yeah, no, it's been a crazy couple of weeks. Definitely, dealing with the scheduling issues and the ins and outs of helping our customers with flooring, design, and this and that, and it from what it looks like, I feel like it's going to be a busy 2025. It's shaping up to be that way. It's always a good thing, and to shout out to Gray again. It's always good to see young people interested in this type of industry, because right now it's hard to find good quality work, good quality labor, and it seems like Gray's a good egg, and so we don't want to crack him. We want to we want him to grow.
Protect the egg. But you know what? There is a bit of a dearth of quality service people in the fitness industry right now. I mean, it does seem to be growing again a little bit now. I mean, like there could be more people entering this field, but it is nice to just continue to see that happening. So, thank you all for sharing your recent feelings. We're 10 minutes in here and we haven't talked about anything useful. So let's get to the point here for the people that actually came to learn something. What we really wanted to talk about today partly has to do with our recent activity where we've been out in the field and visiting a lot of clients and things like that and looking at these buildings. And what we've really come to appreciate here in these last couple weeks is that there is a lot of value to physically getting out on site and seeing these projects with your own eyes, particularly before you go out with the equipment that you're planning to install. Because, man, despite all your best efforts sometimes to assess things ahead of time, electronically, virtually, by video, whatever it might be, man, you just really can't replace the benefit or the value of going there yourself, if you're able to, based on where it is regionally or whatever, to see these spaces and just kind of see what you're getting into before you get into it. I know, Robert, you had a pretty illuminating experience recently with that, and I think that it would be helpful to share that with our listeners to kind of just start the conversation. So without name dropping anybody, obviously, talk about that recent experience you had with our client that's upcoming. It's a nice install, but talk about kind of what happened when you went on site, some of the things you discovered, and kind of the benefit of that.
Well, I feel like I'll steal some of your thunder, but here's the point. I was sent and I feel like I've talked about this job already so much, and I apologize to all the listeners. But this particular job's been a month in the making, maybe 2 months. Everything's running together. But the point is that I had to create a quote based off of another vendor, and that vendor is much bigger than we are. And so Stephen and Emily had an opportunity to go out with us. Can anyone notice that Emily is now clicking on her device?
Little clicky.
I thought I heard
just wanted
something.
you to know what it's like.
I just want to bring that to the listeners' attention.
I actually did it on purpose.
So we get out to the location. It's still under construction. This is a university that's going through a beautiful renovation. The basketball courts are looking really nice. But in the athletics and in the strength room, I was asked to go out. Now, that's a pet peeve of mine, that I want to go out and see the location. And I had the opportunity because they're less than an hour away. So we went out as a field trip. We had another location to go to as well. And we got out there, and obviously the room downstairs, still under construction. But even from the diagram, the walls had a rounded look. But when we got out there, they weren't rounded. And then, of course, there were columns that I had to take into account. So I was able to walk with the customer downstairs and explain to him how much actual space would be used. And then I gave him an understanding that this is actually where you'll be doing most of what it is that you and your students will be doing. You're going to lose space here and here. And then that was one discussion. That didn't go so bad. But I had to prove to him, he kept wanting to add equipment. I know you both, Steve and Steven, you've been down this road. Someone wants to add equipment. Well, once I verified the measurements, I let them know that it's just not possible. This is all you can put in here. But the big news to the discussion today was, and we have mentioned the cost of touchscreen consoles. Beautiful addition, especially with renovation like this. It would be really nice to put them in. So I had this quote. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of equipment going into the school. And a good portion of that is going to be technology. So I get out there. I'm with my point of contact, athletic director, and the general contractor that was overseeing the project. And I looked down at the wall, and I said to my point of contact, I don't see cable TV connections. I don't see Ethernet connections. Are they going to be installed? and to see the look on their face. Were you there? Did you witness that?
Yeah.
Did you witness that as well? Is as if they didn't even know they were necessary. And I said, you're going to spend all this money, but you can't use any of the technology. Has the other vendor been here? And of course, I knew the answer. The answer is no, they haven't been there. So they quoted out this equipment, and there's been no discussion since the quote as to whether, because I know how these things work. You'll get a quote. If you accept the quote, they're going to send back a disclaimer that says you need the following. But you're already in because you've already spent the money. So now you got the equipment on the way, and now, oh, by the way, you need this. And they didn't have it. And that's the stress that can be avoided is if you have someone on hand, personally partnering with you, putting a real interest into your project. And last point on this, my point of contact shared his thoughts about how professional and appreciation for that professionalism of coming out and spending quality time with them. So again, the stress here is that, yes, it looks great on paper, but there's a lot of small details in a fitness center that you should really bring out the professional to make sure you get everything covered before you decide to put your ink to paper, so to speak, to purchase the equipment, because each piece of equipment sometimes has its own needs. We've talked about dedicated outlets. But wow, what an eye-opener for them, because now I've got to redirect my quote to fit what they've already put out there, which is basically just outlets at the wall.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a great summary of that situation and highlighting some of those things. And we're going to circle back to a couple of those specifics and talk about that briefly. But Emily, I don't want to steal your thunder there.
Just to give some backstory, and I know we've talked about this on a previous podcast, but this whole opportunity came about because we had serviced this particular location for many, many years. And then I went to send a renewal because I handle the maintenance side of the business with the contracts. And my main point of contact for the contract had said, we're not going to need this because we're in construction. And, you guys have been great. Thank you so much for everything you've done up to this point. But now we're going to be buying new equipment. And I'm glad that I had forwarded that to Robert so that then he then said, how come we haven't been considered? And that's how the whole thing got started. And then to his point, they had already gotten a quote from a bigger vendor who obviously didn't take the time to really work closely as we do when it comes to things like this. And so, when Robert noticed that there weren't those kind of connections, this person that he's working with now can go back to that other vendor and say, hey, they pointed out this. Did you even consider this? Like that, something to think about. So yeah, I thought that was pretty cool.
And we often talk about that, how if you only handle one side of the business, you're only concerned with one side of the business, right? So if you're just the people that sell the equipment and that's the only thing you do and that's the only part of the business you run, why would you care, if the Wi-Fi doesn't work or whatever after the fact, right? It's going to be somebody else's problem to deal with.
Exactly.
That's kind of the mentality, unfortunately, of a lot of, and I won't say all. I don't want to put a whole, negative stamp on the whole operations of all sales companies, but when you have a partner who does do both sides of the business, both the before consultation and the sales, and then also the service and maintenance, more likely than not, that company's not going to want to set themselves up for heartache and heartbreak later on down the line. So, kind of circling back to that project that you were talking about, there, if I'm remembering correctly, are probably well beyond 20 pieces of cardio in that room, right? Probably well beyond that, if I'm remembering correctly. It's a pretty large number of cardio. I can't remember exactly how many. Now, if there's no Ethernet cables, this one I think Stephen can answer this. If there's no Ethernet connections in the room, is there another option to connect most of those cardio consoles to the internet if there's no Ethernet? It's not a trick question.
I mean, the only other option is wireless,
Right.
But that has its limitations. And when you have you have to plan for the worst, basically. So if everyone is trying to stream at the same time, then you're going to have a bog in the system, and then your features are going to be restricted, and then you're going to have frustration. And when you have a brand new gym, guess what's going to happen? Everyone's going to want to show up and use it.
Yep.
And it's going to be crowded. And then when the first initial experiences are not good and all they're dealing with is a struggling Wi-Fi system, well, the console's not going to be, it's going to be useless at that point. So you spend all that money and then you get a frustrated customer at that point.
Yep, exactly. And then it's not always even just the cardio units that get connected to that Wi-Fi. I mean, typically it's the same Wi-Fi network that people who are coming into the gym, they connect their phones to it, they connect their tablets to it, whatever else might be. So you could have seriously high numbers of devices trying to connect to a Wi-Fi network. And then to your point, the very last thing you want when you open the doors on your brand new shiny fitness center where all your young, tech-savvy college students most likely are coming in and going to use that equipment, you're going to start getting a bunch of complaints if the internet is loading slowly or they're not able to get things working correctly. And really, that is completely counter to the point of having that technology. The technology is intended to enhance and add like seasoning or spice to the room, not make it a scenario where you're now going to have people that are going to be trying to take advantage of that, but struggling and complaining. It takes what should be a very cool, very exciting situation and time for your building and turns it into a potentially very frustrating time, because at that point, there's only so many ways you can address that problem. You can put boosters in, you can try to enhance the signal, but all of that is, trying to solve a problem that you really could have avoided entirely from the beginning. And that's just a lot of heartache. And another example, Robert, that you mentioned, or maybe it was Emily, I can't remember, but the dedicated outlets, right?
Yeah, I mentioned that.
Yeah, briefly, just highlight the dedicated outlets. What units typically require them, and why is that the case?
That's for me or Steven?
You can answer this. Steven just got done talking.
Oh, okay. So a dedicated outlet, I guess to make it as simple as possible, majority of the requirement is for the treadmill. The treadmill has a varying amp draw, and so most treadmills will ask you for a 20 amp dedicated outlet. So depending on the size of the user and how the user is performing on the treadmill will depend on what the requirement for amp draw would be. So larger user obviously would draw more than a smaller user. Someone running faster would pull more than someone walking, so forth and so on. But if you put those on more than one treadmill on one breaker, you run the risk that if it gets up to that point, it will trip. And when a breaker trips, there is no notice. And if there is a user who was on their way to a half marathon, that treadmill stops, there's definitely the possibility of injury. So we try to stress that you make sure that right from the start, that you make sure you have those outlets wired properly for treadmills specifically because of that necessity. Other equipment not necessarily needs that. It's obviously optimal, but specifically for treadmill, if you open their owner's manual, you'll find that information.
Absolutely. And I really wanted to talk about the outlets because particularly in the case that you were describing where you're dealing with a property that's putting a large number of touchscreen consoles, probably all of those units are going to require an outlet in order for those touchscreens to work. That's usually one of the determining factors if you need an outlet or not. If you're going to talk about a bike or an elliptical or something along those lines, if you're using a simple LED console, you don't often need an outlet because they can be self-generating. But if you're going to have a touchscreen, you are going to have outlets. Now, there's a lot of different types of outlets. I'm looking here at an outlet on the wall behind Steven that is not an appropriate outlet for most commercial treadmills. However, if you aren't dealing with a consultant who's telling you up front that you need this very certain specific type of outlet configuration for your treadmills, then when you go to plug in your treadmill and you have the NEMA 15 outlet instead of the NEMA 20 outlet, Robert, what's going to happen?
Well, like our friends, actually I won't name drop them, but Emily and I, Gray and Logan had a chance to move equipment for a physical therapist They went from an older building to a renovated building. And as soon as we got in, the outlets weren't proper. So we had to leave the treadmills unplugged because they did not have the proper outlet.
Yep.
So again, consultation would have been helpful in the beginning. I'm not sure who headed up that project. We're more on the tail end. They needed someone to move the equipment properly and then retest once on location. And that's when we discovered the outlets weren't proper. So to your point, don't have the proper outlet. And even while I was there, not to drag the story on, but explaining to them, just like I just explained a few minutes ago, the necessity for the dedicated outlet, especially in an environment like that where someone's rehabilitating whatever, a knee, a hip, whatever the case is, believe it or not, someone walking slow is going to draw higher amperage than you realize because their full weight of the body is on there, and a lot of times their feet are dragging on the deck, leaving a lot more of that. So now the electronics are warming up. So again, necessity to have it properly wired.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the consultation up front is super critical. We talk about that a lot. But what we're here talking about today is the site visit portion of, what we do and why that can be valuable. And I know from my own personal experiences with very, very many different projects, no one in particular. So if you're listening, I'm probably not talking about you specifically. And even if I am, I'm talking about you and probably a bunch of other people too, because it's very common. When you go out to these sites, I know, for instance, with a lot of my projects, I provide electrical maps for them ahead of time that have different electrical outlets and data symbols to indicate the types of outlets that they need and the types of Ethernet connections and things that they need. And I'll often provide that to the designer and the architect up front or whoever it is working on the project. But even in spite of that, oftentimes that information doesn't make it fully to the people actually putting the outlets in the walls. And there have been many, many times that despite the fact that I've talked to them about that ahead of time, when I get out there to do the preliminary site walk before the installation, I'm pulling up my little map and I'm saying, look, guys, I told you what you needed here, but doesn't look like that information made it. And that could just be a matter of the fact that there are lots of people involved in some of these large projects. So when you get to the point where you're trying to get that information delivered to the people that need it, you may be giving it to the project manager, who then has to give it to the GC, who then has to give it to the actual electrical contractor. And it's kind of like the old telephone game. Sometimes the message just doesn't make it to the end the way you need. So the best way to ensure success in those situations is not to assume that anything is ever going to be perfect if you can avoid it, and go out there and check it out for yourself, because it's a way better experience to tell somebody a week before install that they got to fix their outlet than a week after, particularly if they were planning on opening the doors and exciting their residents, and now they can't because they have to solve some other problem. Robert, I did see your hand. I didn't want to ignore you.
This could be a poor way of putting a plug in for RMS Fitness, but I'll say it anyway. My site visit to this university was free of charge because I wanted to make sure it was right. And that's just what we do, is we go out to make it right, because nothing is more disappointing to us and to our clients than to come out with the equipment and not have that. So I was trying to imagine myself coming out with that equipment, or worst case scenario, asking an installer partner to go out with us and then start the process of assembling them, and then them informing me, hey, these outlets aren't enough. What an embarrassment. So to avoid the embarrassment and to just put a little more emphasis on getting it right the first time, our motto of getting things done, being built for fitness like we are, that we want to do it right. And that's why we do it as a courtesy. Did you hear that plug? It was pretty good.
Dropping the slogan. But yeah, those site visits, though, being done as a courtesy or being done, free of charge, that's just part of what we feel is included in us doing our job for you. You know what I mean? And I don't think it's wrong to compliment your own company for something that you've instilled as part of the culture here. I think that's really important. And you should be proud of that as the fearless leader that you are. You should be proud of the fact that you've created an environment where people feel proactive and not reactive. In 2024, you always have to be a little reactive sometimes, because no matter how hard you try, there's always going to be some curveballs and things, it seems. But by taking a proactive approach out of the gate, you can eliminate some of the times that you have to be reactive, which just, again, it's not totally avoidable, but it is something that you should always strive for, to be able to deliver the absolute best final product on the day of install, so that, if you are coming back out, it should be to try to solve a problem that you had no idea was going to exist, like a machine out of the box having an issue or something like that. You can't avoid a lot of those things, but you can eliminate all the other heartbreak to a pretty substantial degree by being a little proactive. And as I'm sitting here thinking about, okay, Emily, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just also thinking how it was Robert, Stephen, and I walking the facility with this gentleman that we've been working with. And all I keep thinking about is not only can he, if now I realize he's not the only decision maker, but not only can he feel good about proceeding with buying from RMS Fitness, but seeing how we handle things, he can also be rest assured how things are going to be handled after the equipment is installed, that we do care, and that, that we are, easy to connect with, easy to communicate with, easy to get in touch with. And so if there is any problems for service with the equipment, he can be rest assured knowing that everything's in good hands.
Absolutely. That's a good point too, Emily. Thank you. Stephen?
Yeah, and piggybacking off of what Emily said.
Pigging?
And pigging.
So like installation day is a very monumentous day, and it's a nerve-wracking day, especially for like the point of contact, because especially with these big projects too, because there's a lot riding on the line, not only for us in general, but also for the point of contact, because it's a big project, a lot of money is spent, and the less chance of headaches, the better. The better it would be, the better outcome. And so that's why, we try our very best to inform all of our contacts that it's best we do like a walkthrough before anything is purchased, before anything is ordered. It's best to do that, because we can say, okay, look, this is going to fit. This product here is kind of overkill. It's going to overcrowd the room, and nothing's been ordered. And then, so there's less of a commitment once something has already been purchased. But also, when you walk the room and you get a general idea of how the installation is going to go, where the big 18, 16-foot, 26-foot box trucks are going to go, well, the customer is already in his mind, in his or her mind, knows kind of like how things are going to look, how many people are generally going to be there. And so that in itself helps alleviate whatever anxiety the point of contacts might have with the big installation day. And hopefully the idea is to have a smooth install.
Yeah, and your techs and your installers will appreciate it a lot too, right? Like, nobody wants to be on the receiving end of Adam pulling up in his 24-foot long box truck and not knowing where he's supposed to go, and having to figure that out on the fly, right? Like,
nobody.
That's like, and he doesn't want to have to deal with that either. Like, driving those large vehicles is stressful to a certain degree. You're trying to be extra cautious and safe, and not knowing where you're going when you're pulling up to maybe a busy project site or a construction site, or maybe even a building that's already open. That can be an extra added layer of stress.
Yep.
That just can be put on your team. It can be put on your clients and the people that live in their communities and things, especially if you're talking about multifamily, because trick question, if you run an apartment community, you probably often, especially like in the summertime, have residents, maybe Emily, moving where?
Moving in.
Or out. So if you don't coordinate that parking properly or figure that out, and you pull up the same day somebody's got their moving truck, planned to be there and unloading. Well, now you've maybe got a little bit of a pickle.
And we have been in those type of situations especially when it came to the elevators. Remember, Bob?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, we have, and the elevators is another thing. So these are all things to consider. Now, another advantage of sometimes a site visit and why it is critical. I'm gonna get him because he's typing. He's probably not paying attention. Steven, we just were talking about this earlier today. We had a project where we were looking at a very small room with some. They gave us some measurements for, and they told us they had 11-foot ceilings. But what else was there on the ceilings that were 11 foot high? But maybe these items were not 11 feet high.
Yeah, so, and that's why it's like a picture helps too of the fitness room. So, 11 feet high. Yeah, stepper makes sense. We can put a stepper in this environment, but we look at the pictures, and there's, lo and behold, these fans, 2 fans in the center of the room. So, not that it couldn't work, but it helps us in our design, in our rendering, where to put products in certain areas to make the best use of the room. And again, without having to backtrack when you're there on site and here the customer has in their mind this layout, and then when the reality happens, is like it's a completely different, and they're just going to have to deal with it at that point, and it just creates a frustration.
Exactly, because very typically when you install or design equipment up front, you're laying it out in the most effective and efficient way possible for the function of the room and the function of the equipment, and any changes that you have to make to that are most likely going to impact that in some way. It's if you would have designed it another way, it probably would have been because that was the most effective way to do it. But because you now can't do it the way that you designed it, it's probably going to come slightly at the expense of some function or some, moving space within the room, working space and things. And, to your point, those ceiling fans, they were only 9 feet from the floor. So you put a stair mill in a room like that, in an area where the fan is an impact. Somebody like myself, who's 5'7", might not have much of an issue, but you get Robert, 6'22", up there, up on a stair mill, and he might be getting his head bonked by a ceiling fan, and that certainly is not okay.
We don't want that, Steve.
We don't want that,
No.
Especially not Robert. You don't want to see what happens when he gets his head bonked by a
that
ceiling fan.
That poor ceiling fan.
Yeah, he's got a pretty hard head. I don't know if that fan wants any of that smoke. No, but as I'm sitting here just talking through all these different aspects of the site visits, I've had numerous events recently where I've gone to do some site visits. Now, I will go to great lengths to make sure that I know what's going on at these jobs. I will drive 3 hours from Maryland to New York to look at your room to make sure that I am not going to get any nasty grams or extra complaints and emails and things from, the install partners or the regional folks that we're using, in that area, if it's not going to be us personally. And a lot of times it is us. And recently, in some of my travels to do that, I've encountered things like walking into a room where I had this equipment was like forensically laid out to, just meet fire codes and ADA and things like that. And then I get there and there was some like millwork that they just added to a corner, like some cubbies and a little towel station. And I'm sure to the designer, it was a great addition, but to me, it was heartbreaking because I had to really get back in the trenches then and rework that space. Now, fortunately, that was not the day of the install that I was discovering that. Another example that comes to mind was a local job here that the RMS team was handling. And, Robert, he was out there with the team leading the charge, and we get out there, and I did identify one issue ahead of time, which was that where a large piece of equipment was supposed to be installed, they had decided to hang a very nice custom, like metal TV frame that could not be relocated. So that was an issue because we didn't want to block the TV, obviously, and they weren't willing to move it, and we didn't want to block their TV, so we had to kind of get in the trenches and move that piece of equipment around. But then another thing that I, even myself being on site, overlooked was that another portion of the wall had a decorative kind of treatment to it where we were supposed to be mounting another piece of equipment to a wall, and that material I did not realize because I didn't walk up and physically bang on it with my hands was metal. It was not something easy to drill through and mount to. So rather than being able to get right to work, we've mentioned it before, Adam, he had to, instead of doing what he was there to do, he had to pivot. He had to get some different types of drill bits and different types of, mounting materials and things like that. Now, fortunately, that was one where the pivot was slight and could be done. But those are the types of things that, and I'm even being honest with my own shortcoming there. You really have to take the time if it is at all possible. And I only say that because I know sometimes it just, the way things come together, it just isn't. But if it is at all possible, those site visits can really be just really impactful and helpful in terms of making sure that those spaces come together the way that you intended. Because if that piece wouldn't have been able to go right where it was, there was nowhere else in that room where it would have worked. It was the only place, really, based on the location of other things and doors and windows and outlets where it would have made any sense. So that would have been a big game changer to not be able to get that done. And I'm grateful that I had a guy like Adam who could use his creative problem-solving skills, which is one of his absolute strengths, and we're grateful to have him to solve that. But I would have liked to have avoided that problem if I could have altogether. Robert.
So, Emily, what's it like having an Adam on location doing an install?
Full confidence that no matter what, it's going to get done.
Yeah, because I think Stephen and I would agree when we go out, what we're working on is assembling the equipment. But when it comes to things outside of just the equipment, it's surprising how much we have to adapt. And just to add to your story, Steve, imagine having to call a third party to make all those decisions. Even to your point, you said the decision in reality wasn't that big, but to have someone have the supplies on their person to be able to make that decision, that doesn't always happen. And frustrations can really escalate from there. So we are thankful that we can have someone on the team who can make those split decisions, have the experience, and to be able to do those things. So just emphasizing here at the team the amount of experience that's on our team.
Absolutely. So we would just like to take this moment here at Everyone Needs a Spotter to acknowledge that everyone also needs an Adam, and we're grateful that we have him.
Yes, we are.
Stephen didn't say anything, so I don't think he is, but the rest of us are really grateful to have
He's
him.
just on his device, that's all. But yes, Adam has been with us for a very long time. Adam has a lot of experience with construction sites. His father had been in construction for a long time, so that's what Adam's first job was. So he's a young man, but he's very old school as far as his work ethic and his ability to see. He is our MacGyver. He is able to see anything through, and he never stops. He is a workhorse, so we're very thankful to have him on our team.
Yeah, he's like a double-edged sword too, because he's like he can get crafty with things, but he can also like put a treadmill on his back and just like walk down the street with it. So it's
if it has to be done, he'll do it.
He's got a lot of different skills, and obviously one of the things that we are we were just talking about this. We want to take opportunities where we can to express gratitude for our team members here too at RMS, because it's not just these 4 people here on the microphones that make this thing happen. There is many hands make light work around here, and we need to acknowledge all of those people and the roles that they play. So if you're listening and you hear us shouting anybody out, it's because we're grateful to have all these guys on our team. And really, I don't want to go on too much more about the site visits. I think we've painted enough different illustrations and examples of the types of things that can be overlooked ahead of time and avoided by a little bit of additional diligence if you have a team that has the bandwidth and the resources to come and actually see those sites in person to make sure that on the day of that the project goes just so. So I think that's probably a fairly good place to end that discussion. As we get ready to wrap up here for the week, I know I am off to some busy things. I've got a family cookout this weekend. It's like a whole big group of the family getting together. I haven't done that in quite a while where we've all been able to get together in one place. So this is all my in-laws and my brother-in-laws and all the cousins and aunts and uncles are going to be together. So they're calling for a little weather on in our part of town on Saturday tomorrow. So we may all be packed in my father-in-law's house like some sardines if it starts raining. But we're grateful to be together with them. So I know that's what I'm up to this weekend. Robert, fearless leader, anything on your agenda here this weekend?
Well, the girls in the family are at the beach, so they're enjoying. Today is a nice day, but to your point, I don't think tomorrow's going to be a nice day, but I'm sure they'll find something to do. My son and I will probably hang out and do the whole dude thing, movies, video games, more movies. Probably I'll eat like I shouldn't eat, and then, that'll wrap up the weekend. I think I'm going to cut the lawn today. Very exciting weekend.
It sounds like the ultimate bachelor dad weekend. Video games, eating food, movies, and then cutting the grass. Steven, I think are you a lone warrior this weekend too?
I am a lone warrior. Sunday, I will pick up the significant other from the airport, but
Is she gonna have an accent when she gets back?
she might. She very well.
Governor.
Hello, Stephen. Pleasure to be home with you.
The good old Donadeo, I see.
Did we just go Australian? What happened there, Emily?
She went on a walkabout.
Put another shrimp on the barbie. Sorry, Glenn. I'm so sorry, bro. We love you. We appreciate you.
Oh my goodness. But this weekend, probably a little bit of work on in the house, and a little bit of chilling too. So, yeah, pretty busy weekend.
Cool, man. Well, we're hopefully, your wife makes it home safely from her trip, and obviously hope she had a good time. We're looking forward to her being back. I know the team is looking forward to her being back. Emily V, little wipey. What up with the weekend, yo?
Nothing much.
Nothing
much.
Yeah.
Just some things I need to handle, but it's pretty much on the low key.
Yeah, a couple necessary pieces of business this weekend to tend to. But, sometimes that be how it is, and that's what you got to do. But
right.
You know what? On that note, I think we're going to go ahead and put a pin in this thing for the weekend, get on out of here and enjoy ourselves. And simply before we wrap up, we would like to ask, as we always do, that if you have found this episode of Everyone Needs a Spotter to be educational, informative, and or entertaining, that you would simply share it with a member of your network that you think might benefit from this information. That's the biggest thanks that we can expect and appreciate from anyone who listens, is that you would share this with somebody else. And we hopefully imparted some information to you that can benefit you in your quest to operate, create, design, and maintain the ultimate fitness amenity at your facility. I am Steve Heitzer, your host here at Everyone Needs a Spotter, signing off and saying have a great weekend. Steven.
Have a great weekend, everybody.
Robert.
Enjoy the last days of summer.
Emily.
Sorry.
Enjoy your weekend.
See you, everybody. We'll catch you next time.